Hi. It is a day of the week at about 10 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. We haven't fallen back yet. I guess that happens soon in a couple weeks. And yeah, that'll be interesting because my clock never sprang forward. I mean, there's one on the computer, but the numbers are too small for me to read from where I'm sitting. You're not looking at anything. You're looking at a paper towel. Here, show you these. That makes it more interesting. Yeah. So the big thing that will happen is when we fall back. The clock. It's always spring forward, fall back. That's how we remember whether to set our time. Like an hour later. Yeah, that's springing forward. You go from like 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Actually, you're supposed to change it in the morning, like at 2 in the morning, from like 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. That's springing forward. And then you fall back, so you go from 2 a.m. to 1 a.m. I guess that's a good thing because then you get to wake up. When you wake up at your regular time, when your alarm goes off at whatever 6:47 a.m., your body really thinks it's 7:47 a.m., so you get an extra hour of sleep. At least that's what some people say about it. But that event is coming up, and the reason I'm talking about it, well, there's several reasons why I'm talking about it. One is it fills some time because I just got, this is a very awkward time of model building right now because I'm kind of finishing one, but not quite because I don't have the right paints. I've got a couple that are really close to being done, but not quite because I just didn't, or because the decals, were a disaster. You've heard that story many times. But the reason I'm rambling on about this, in addition to using up streaming time during which otherwise I have nothing productive to do, is that the clock that I look at the wall, which is large enough that I can see it without my glasses, never sprang forward. And so that clock thinks that it's just like, well, it's running fast, isn't it? Huh. Look at that. The computer says it's 10:04, and that clock says it's 10:08. Actually, it doesn't. It says it's 9:08 because it never sprang forward from 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. when that happened in April. And so I always have to make an adjustment, a mental adjustment when I look at that clock to the time that it actually is supposed to be. I don't know why it's running. It's running almost, it's running 4 minutes fast. Well, I guess I'm not going to fix that. It's up on the wall. I have to get up on a step stool and take it down and move it and probably change the battery. Oh, yeah, without a doubt. One of these days it'll just stop moving altogether because the battery will run out. And maybe that's when I'll adjust the time to more accurately represent the actual time that it is. There was a time, speaking of time, because I've said the word several times now, speaking of time, there was a time when I routinely would start at more or less 10 o'clock Eastern, whatever, daylight or standard time here in the US, and would just mutter on for like a half hour. It was unusual for me to actually get started on something before about 10:25 of whatever time it was. And then recently, that I would say within the last 6 months, that tradition has been violated, and I've been getting started earlier. So I'm not sure quite what happened. I guess it's just part of the general theme of me not having, after 75 years of doing this, it feels like forever. been doing this stream now for a long time. Yeah, I mean, what is there to talk about? I suppose, I could reminisce about something or whatever. I just discovered something. Hold on. One of these little tubes that protects the tips of a very fine brush. And it was up there on where I keep my brushes. I thought I had lost it. It just came off of the brush, I guess, and went there. I'm going to put it. I have a box of things over here. Put it in that box of things, as opposed to the container of things. Oh, well, I should have put it in here. This is where I've got the extra ones. Okay, well, here, that gives me something more to do to waste time before I actually get going on something, is to move it from the box where it shouldn't have gone into the little container where it should have. This is where I keep just miscellaneous junk, little pieces of balsa wood and toothpicks, a Q-tip. Ooh, I might use that later, because one of the things I might do is to put some decals on the Apollo command module. That's a possibility. So I have to remember that that's there. That's a trick, remembering things. So yeah, here I am, not even 10 minutes into it, and I am running out of things to waste time about. I suppose I could talk about, and now what? Well, one now what is attaching these railings, these railing attachment points around the perimeter, the inside perimeter of the command bridge. And that'll be kind of a, I just have to be, as you can see, there's no little lines or any alignment markers or anything on the bottoms of these. Yeah, there is a difference between the top and the bottom, which I probably should attend to before I start attaching them. So there's 4 of them. So I'm going to be moving this thing toward me. And of course, I'm wearing a sweatshirt with big floppy arms on it, so that when I reach over something, it'll catch and break. That was foresightful. So yes, one of the things I will be doing today is attaching these. And once these are attached, okay, this command bridge, which is this, okay, I managed to get those panels put on Wednesday. Okay, and then I got these attached and the stairs reattached. That'll be completed, and the command bridge model then will be done, except for the character figures of Spock, Sulu, and Kirk. And those aren't done. I started painting them, but the paints I wanted to use for their tunics, the light blue and the yellow, are old paints. And what happens with these acrylics, as I've discovered the hard way by trying to use them, is that as the solvent evaporates, the consistency of the paint becomes kind of gelatinous almost. It goes on smoothly, but the way it's supposed to work is that, you can paint from an unpainted surface into the painted surface to get rid of brush marks and things, is that when doing that, the brush, instead of, the paints blending together, the brush picks up the previously applied paint. And so I tested both of them, and they just were a disaster. I put some thinner in, hoping that by thinning them down with the official thinner for that brand of paint, that it would make them work. It didn't, at least initially, but I'll try again. So that's the story about the figures. So I'm going to be attaching these 4 things. That's the one thing I will definitely be doing. I'll be starting on that as soon as I finish wasting enough time at the beginning of the stream talking about what I'm going to maybe do to the rest of it. I'm going to retest the yellow and light blue paints that I had added thinner to, that they've sat there since Wednesday, kind of mixing up. I'm going to retest those to see if maybe the thinner has made them usable. If yes, then I can move ahead with painting the figures tunics, actually. If no, then I can't, because the paints are unusable. I do have an alternative yellow. Okay, this is an alternative yellow to the other yellow I was using. The color isn't quite as good. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to make a test patch to see what the color really looks like once it's painted on to a white surface. Pulling these up so that I maybe can reach over things without knocking them over. And I'm going to paint a test patch to see what the color really turns out to be. And then I'm going to try a wash on it to see if that improves the color. I don't know what to do about the blue, though. I have no alternative to that light blue, which in itself wasn't the best color. But I don't have anything at all. I mean, other than kind of what's it called, azure, which is probably not anywhere close. It's not anywhere close to the Spock color. I've used up 14 minutes. Great. Okay. So after I do some little test painting, and then these railings have sat on there, long enough so that they probably won't fall off if I move things, I'm going to move this. I'm going to show it to you, what it looks like completed with the filling in piece of cardboard for the middle here. And then I opened up a space on the shelf over there by moving something somewhere else where it's in the way. I don't know where I put it. Probably, it's on the floor. Great. Yeah, so I'll get this out of the way. And then I could maybe do a little bit of painting on the figures. I could paint their boots. I could paint their badges. I think I might mess around with those a little bit. I will. Yeah, I'm going to put the decals on the command module. They're just 2 United States that go on the command module sides. I should do that, and then I can complete the bundling up of the Apollo in a box that I will then store. There's an opening on the bottom shelf over there where I could put the Apollo stack, get that out of the way. I should reserve one of these streams to actually show the models I've completed. I really should show them off. If you go back on the old YouTubes, that's the best way to do it, is to find them and to see them in progress, and then you can see them as they're finished, like the submarine. Way back when, you could see each compartment of the submarine being completed and installed into the hull. And then at the very end, it was really long. It's like this long. It's really awkward. I moved it back and forth under the camera, this camera thing, so you could see it. Rather than lifting it up and attempting to break it, I'll just, you could do that. But the submarine was done. And then the Apollo mostly got done. I finally finished the command module stickers for the display panels. You should watch that YouTube. That was actually kind of cool because I found pictures of the control panels of the command module online and was able to shrink them down and manipulate them and print them on sticker paper and apply them to the model so that it didn't look stupid. It looked, when you look through the tiny little opening of the hatch, you can see them, and they turned out looking pretty well. So I did the submarine and that, and then I built the Savoia S-21, and that's actually completely finished, and that came out really well. I'm happy about that. That wasn't a solid A minus. Maybe some parts of it are a solid A. And then I was working on the Lotus Ford for a long time and got really close to finishing that until the sponsorship decal disaster happened. And while I was waiting for new decals to be ordered and shipped, aftermarket decals, I started working on this, and now this is done. So, yeah. Well, I've used up 18 minutes before actually doing anything. That's not too bad. It's not quite 25 or 30 minutes like it used to be, but not too bad. So, what I'm going to do is move this closer to me so that I can reach it and very carefully rotate it. And I'm going to put on, I'm going to, no, it isn't falling apart. That is so nice. Not falling apart. I'm going to attach the ones that are hardest to reach first, the ones that require reaching over stuff. Like that. That will end up like that, pretty much. This chair is always in the way. I'm really glad that it's made so that it comes off, it rotates, but it is always in the way. These are right side up. If I don't remember to check, I'll put them on upside down, and then they won't look good. Okay. So I'm going to attach these with contact cement like I did these and the stairs, because that gives me the best chance of putting them on the right place, but also moving them around a little bit if I don't get it exactly right. Okay. And it'll probably smear the contact cement around the bottom of these things a little bit. Something that could happen, but it won't show unless you pick it up and turn it over, in which case you would probably break something. And then I'll try to get them, symmetric and aligned like that. And then when it's close to being just exactly right, I'm going to just tell myself to stop. And there it was upside down again. To stop messing with it. That's a message I send myself frequently, is just stop messing with it. It's okay the way it is, and then I'll probably mess with it a little more. And then I'll go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Look what I did. And then hopefully fix it and move on to the next one. Oh, I still have little labels on the backs of these. Each of these panels had a number on it to make sure it went in the right place, but I sanded the numbers off because the backs show. But I don't need these pieces of blue painter's tape on here anymore. That's something something I can do without causing a problem is take off little bits of tape there. Okay, well, the tape is off and I didn't break anything. So, yay. So this contact cement is supposed to go on both surfaces. It's supposed to sit for like 15 minutes or so, 10 or 15 minutes, and then you put the two surfaces together and they adhere to each other, which is why it's called contact cement, because it cements on contact. But I discovered when I attached these that it actually works. I didn't expect this, but it actually works quite well. When it's applied to just one surface, okay, and not sitting around for a while. I was quite surprised by that, really, but very pleasantly surprised, because that means that I can put this on the surface where I'm attaching the thing and then attach it, and it will grab hold. It will like hold it, but still allows a few moments of manipulation to make sure that it's set in the right place. And I need a scrap of paper towel to wipe the cement off of. The toothpick, not well, partially so I can just reuse it, but also so that it doesn't like get onto other things. So now there's contact cement on the tops of those, and now I'm going to make an attempt just it's really good. It just grabs so nicely. That's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to hold that on like that. I can rotate this way and try to do that again with the next one. So there, I did an assembly. Now I need to successfully repeat that 3 more times. I am being cautious, putting the cap back on the cement, because there's always a chance I could bump it, and that would be, whoa, half a can of contact cement all over the work surface and the shelf below me on the floor. Well, that I don't even want to contemplate the cleaning up mess that would require, the cleaning up of the mess. Okay, it's interesting. This one doesn't fit quite as well. These things are actually further apart on this one than on the others. And they don't line up perfectly. So I need to make a decision about where it will stick out. I guess I'm going to let it stick out in the center. No, I'm going to move this up. Let it stick out a little bit on the ends. but try to keep it minimal. Yeah, it's all part of the. This is not an extremely well constructed model, not constructed, but manufactured. Well, there's nothing to be done. It either sticks out here or here. When I mean stick out, is that the base will show. I think what I'm trying to do is get them so that it shows a little bit both sides. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to be done about it. They just don't line up. So unless these are all the same, so there's going to just be, it's just going to be that way. Wait, there was some give in that. Cool. Okay, what I was able to do is that the contact cement actually allowed some manipulation of that base. Just a little bit. I was able to push it just a little bit. Okay. That's as good as that's going to get. Yeah. Look at that. That one isn't. That one is not. It's not falling off. Oh, that one is falling off. That's not good. Okay. I need to reattach this. No, it's not. Holding. Just as I was congratulating the adherence of the contact cement, it failed. Okay, so there's always something. There just is always something. And that was a thing. Okay, I'm violating all my rules here. Clean this up. No matter how much extra time it takes, do not take the chance of knocking over the contact cement jar can. Yeah, for whatever reason, this one decided not to stay stuck. These are really firmly attached. I think that one's sufficient. I'm going to attach this one while that's still setting. And I'm hoping that, the combination of attachment points will hold it all in place. This last one is different. It's smaller. There's 3 of them that are sort of the same size, and then that last one is a different size. Not giving apart here. Right side up. Yeah, wrong side down. Right side. Well, oriented correctly, making sure it's oriented correctly. Yeah, that one's holding. No, that just needs to stay holding like that. There's this one. It's kind of a little bit awkward, but there it is. We'll see how this fits. I haven't tested this one, but it's not symmetric. The others are symmetric, but this one isn't. This distance is bigger than that distance, so there's a very good chance that the railing is just not going to set on there correctly. In which case, I'll just play around with it and grumble. So this has apparently the advantages of CA glue in that it grips right away, but it doesn't have the disadvantage for me of CA glue in that it gives me a few moments to adjust parts before it cures and becomes immobile, which is why I like it. Kind of unfortunately, it's fairly expensive. Unfortunately, it kind of cures itself in the can. Huh. This is actually asymmetric too. Look at that. It's actually molded correctly. So that this side is shorter than the other side, and the angle is different. I'm pleasantly surprised at that. Okay, and then that seems to fit. It fits pretty well on where it's supposed to fit. Don't mess with it. Okay, there. Higher there. I guess that kind of gives you a view of. Put these down. It's uncomfortable. Later, if I need to. So this stuff for me it's kind of been a lifesaver, not a lifesaver, a model saver in terms of sticking parts together because it holds on painted surfaces where the model cement doesn't. The model cement dissolves the underlying plastic and forms a weld, which is great, except a lot of these pieces are painted, and then using that becomes very difficult without scraping the paint away carefully in the parts that need to adhere to each other. But this stuff grips the painted surfaces. I've tried epoxy, and epoxy doesn't grip the painted surfaces. I've had it just fail multiple times, including on the steps. But this seems to, more often than not 100%, but more often than not, it holds. Okay, I'm going to. Well, Who is asking for a flip. Hi, Who. Thanks for joining in. I'm going to move this away from me that far, and I will flip something. Do a flip for Who. While that contact cement is not completely curing, but it's it's just setting there. So after these flips, I'm going to waste some more time after I do these flips talking about what I will probably do next. Thanks for joining in, Who. I want to flip this thing. On one side, it says, kind of. No, you can't. You can't tell because it's not on camera. The director and the camera person I have to say this, like multiple times during the stream, they keep failing. They don't get the camera at the right distance. They're not aiming it correctly. There, on this side, it has some letters, and on this side, it doesn't. Oh, yeah. I know this fingernail. I banged my finger with a hammer. That happens, right? I banged my finger with a hammer a month ago, and the whole thing was this color. And since then, this is from here to here. That's how far it's grown in a month. And eventually, this will just disappear. But it looks like it's going to be like 2 more months. In the meantime, you get to say, "Oh, what happened to your finger?" And occasionally, I will say, "Well, I hit it with a hammer a month ago, or 2 months ago, or 3 months ago." So there's letters, not 2 to 2, 4 to 2. Okay. It's the laws of chance, even though this is, not a perfectly random throw, because it's just not it's asymmetric, and I'm flipping it around, not the same each time. But it usually, almost always, it will be 3 to 3 or 4 to 2. It is like the laws of chance actually work, right? They're like real laws. Nature abides by them. I guess I'll say I think very rarely have I ever seen a 5 to 1, and I don't know in all of the flips that I've ever done for Who where I'd flipped 6 of these things, which has been over 2 years of this. I don't think I've ever had a 6 to 0. So there. Let me move this toward completion and get it out of the way. As you can tell, the model makers, built this ring. They designed this ring and molded this ring, and it would have been really easy to have at least one piece or maybe multiple pieces to fill in on the center, right? But they didn't. It's just so dumb. It's like, why not have, even if they couldn't do it in one piece, one big, large, circular, just all they needed was a flat surface. Just a flat circle of plastic. Look, the box is even big enough. Okay. The box is big enough to cover that. They could have made a circular piece of plastic like this big and dropped it in the box, and then I could have painted it, and there would have been a floor under there. But no, you can see right through it to whatever it's sitting on, which I consider to be a major flaw in the construction of this. So what I did was I cut out a piece of cardboard to the shape of this thing, and it goes under it. And extends just a little bit. Yeah. I got it backward. Really? Cut it wrong. Couldn't even do that. Oh, how is this not working? No, I see what happened. Okay. Yeah, I cut it out to match the this and this, but not to match the outside of the elevator. I see, which extends beyond it. So yeah, I measured it out. I basically just traced around the outside. Pretty much what I did is I traced around the outside of the circle, and you can see that it didn't, it's not perfect. It's a piece of cardboard. It's not plastic. The surface isn't smooth, but I painted it the same color as the floor, so that now it doesn't, well, so that it is what should have come with the model. which was just a piece of plain old surface plastic with a little bit of texture on it that could have been painted and inserted underneath it. And this isn't, you can see it rocks a little bit. See it move. The circle didn't come out perfectly flat, but there it is. So there's that. Now, what I'm going to do next, putting my glass, I can't see close up with those on, is roll up my sleeves again, because I'm going to get the chairs. Put the captain's chair back on, the thing that's always in the way. And then I've got 6 of these chairs. You can see that they're almost but not quite the way they are on the box top. They the thing that I'm most happy about is I was able to get the circular thing. Okay, the arc between the blue on the bottom and the dark on the top. But the blue is too dark and the top should be darker. The gray is too light, the blue is too dark. But they do have the arc. And I spent a long time moaning and groaning about how in the world could one get this arc, how to do that. Because if you look at these chairs on the cover, it looks like they're a 2-part chair on both the inside and the outside. And that's how they could have made them that way. They could have made the seat, okay, and then they could have made the back as 2 separate parts that were attached together. Because when you look at the chair on the box, that's actually how it's formed. This actually sets back a little bit from the inside of the chair there and extends out the back a little bit. And I would think that if they were, good at this, as good at model making, they would have made the seat part and the headrest part separate. And then it would have been really easy to paint one blue and the other one black and then just assemble them. That would have been really quite easy. In fact, the base was a separate piece, and it wasn't that easy to assemble because the location of it on the bottom wasn't well defined. But they didn't do that. And not only didn't they do it as 2 separate pieces, but they didn't even mold in this little ridge. If you look at it, there's a ridge all the way around the outside of the top. Okay, that isn't even molded in. If it was molded in, it would at least have given me a line to hand paint along that. But none of that is true. I mean, they didn't do any of that. So I kept thinking, well, hand painting that arc, that would be next to impossible for me. So I was just going to paint the whole thing blue and just not even try. But then I thought to myself, there's a thing we could do. What if I took some of my masking tape and I cut an arc out of the masking tape? What if I did that? And I actually would be able to, I actually pulled that off. I used the cap of a big marker, a marker pen, to put let me just show this to you. I actually made this happen. It was kind of a shock that I could do this, because I'm usually not good at that sort of thing. So, take some tape like this and then take a cap from a marker. Ta-da! It just fits. Trace a line along the edge of the cap. Okay, just draw a line there with a pen or a pencil or a pen, and then cut it, and there's an arc. And I did that 12 times successfully. Well, I did it actually 13 times because one of them didn't work, and then it was a question of just lining it, putting the arced tape across that, and then putting it on the back and having front and back match, which was an iffy kind of thing, but I managed to do that with only one failure. And then this was primed this gray color. I just left the primer color and then painted the blue. And the only thing I would, other than going out and finding a different color paint, which I didn't want to do. I didn't feel like driving all the way out to the hobby store and spending $6 for a can of spray paint to get the blue lighter. But what I could have done, and I didn't, is I could have painted black over the primer. And then the backs of these chairs would be more closer to the way it looked on the box cover, which is black instead of gray. But I at least got the curve. And now the instructions just say scatter these around. So like here, there's one there. And we'll put one here. And I don't know, can they go down? Is it okay to put them? Oh yeah, look. Oh. Somebody could be working on this panel here. There, like that. That one looks like it needs attention. So put it up there. It's on break. Turn it that way. Don't want to get in front of the major view screen. There's like one for each panel. I could put another one here. That, but that seems too cluttered. I'm just going to set it here. I'm going to have this guy, this person, whoever is there. This is the weapons control. Be kind of facing over that one. There's now those chairs are I don't know. It looks way too symmetric. Yeah, I don't know why I would put one there, but I'm going to. All right, so this is as done as it can be without the figures. And I won't call them minifigs because, yeah, it is a thing there now. Is that Kirk figure, which doesn't look like Kirk at all, gets to sit in the chair. I used to sit in the chair. I'm going to have to put like some rubber cement on his butt or something to get him to stay in his chair. I eventually will sit there like that. Be like that. There. And then Sulu and Spock can just sort of stand around. And they have these little stands that their feet get attached to later. But they're not ready to be put in place because they're not painted. Okay. So this is a thing now. I mean, this is actually done. And the only things that are remaining are the figures that are waiting for paint. Now that it is done, what needs to happen to it is it needs to get out of here. It needs to go over there so that I can do other things here. Not that I really feel like doing anything else today. To be honest, I don't feel like doing anything else today, but I'm going to try to do a few things. One of the things, though, that I do need to do is actually I really do need to pick this whole thing up and move it over there and cover it up so it doesn't get all covered with dust. And I need to do that without breaking anything. So I'm going to be off camera. Here, I'm going to do this sort of carefully. I'm moving a little bench out of the way, checking to make sure there's nothing for me to trip on the floor. This is now being transported. Almost got past that without. now transported onto the shelf next to the submarine, which is also a thing that's way too big. Now take a bunch of paper towels, because that's the least expensive way of covering these things. Take a bunch of paper towels and here, I'm going to put this over here so there's something on camera. What this is the thing I just did. Here. Take these paper towels and cover it. Doing here while I'm off camera, covering the model up. Ta-da! That is done. Hopefully, nothing will smush it. It's there. All right, I've got this little box here. It's a nice little box because the parts that are left don't require this big box. It's like the smallest box I have, so that's where they're going. This box can be repurposed for something that's maybe larger. Yeah, you didn't hear that. The pop thing on the mic is really effective. I just threw the box on the floor. Okay. I can do some work on these guys while I'm waiting for paint, but let me do this. No, that's gone. I have to get another piece. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a test batch with the yellow to see if it will work on Sulu's and Kirk's tunics. Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm going to do that in a very unsophisticated way by just putting some paint on this piece of paper, letting it dry, and then testing two different washes that I've got to see whether the paint without a wash or the paint with a wash will work. You know, I'm not trying to color match exactly, like I did with the chairs. The top is too light, the bottom is too dark. No, so it goes. Now I'm going to put this test patch together and let the paint dry. And while that's drying, I'm going to get the Apollo command module out because I've failed to put the decals on it now for probably 6 months. It's been forever since I finished that. That's except for one other thing that needs to be done, a piece of the service module came off and needs to be reattached, but I'm not going to bother doing that now. I mean, it's okay. It only becomes detached when one opens the door to show the interior detail. That is very bright yellow. So I'm going to take one of these not terribly good brushes, just spread that around. Give myself a long patch. Okay, make a nice long patch so I can test like different washes on different sections of this. This dries pretty quickly. It should be dry. It should be dry enough to mess with in about a half an hour. I'll probably give it a little longer than that. See what it looks like when it's dried. So the things I could do on these minifigs is I can paint their boots. The pants are flat black. The boots are going to be glossy black. I could paint the boots. Be a thing I could do. And also I could put a base coat on the communicator badges that are up here on their tunics. I could base coat those chainmail silver. And once the chainmail silver is dried, they are supposed to be outlined in black. That's going to be a little bit of a challenge because they're really quite small. I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to try to do that with a extremely fine pointed felt tip pen that I've got. And then there are bits on the collar and the pants where there's little spots that need to be touched up, like that. That always seems to happen when painting a large surface. There's little spots that don't get covered. When the paint dries, it shrinks, and it pulls away from the surface a little bit and shows little spots underneath. So I could touch those up. So there's some things I can do on these minifigs. But I am going to be... I just need to be slightly brave and get the command module back out and see if I can find the decals. Sorry, I need to wander a bit here. Get the thing that I need to look on. There's the decals. And this is supposed to go on the service module, and it's not. These, where it says United States, you can see it's kind of curved a little bit. Why is there... like discolored? It looks... they're dirty. Ooh, I don't know if I want to put those on. Okay, so the way this really should be done... Why is there... These are old. Okay, they're from 1993 or something. But look at that. Okay, there's little black spots on there. I'm going to see what's going on with that. They're probably going to be yellowing. Maybe the better part of valor is to simply not do this thing with the decals. I hadn't noticed the black spots, the dark spots on those before. Okay, so I'm going to start with these. Checking to see if they can like be erased. No, it doesn't come off. Okay, so let me show you the thing that this is supposed to go on. These are the instructions. As you can see, this is a big model. This is the interior of the command module. And these are the control panels I talked about that were very poorly done. And this is where I put the stickers on to make them look better. Okay, but the decals are supposed to go on the sides of the command module like that, but I don't know if I want to do that if they're so discolored like that. So this is the command module, okay, and this door opens. Should I show this to you? Door opens, and you can look inside, and the astronauts are sitting in there. See it? And if you look up, you can see it. You can see the control panel. Okay, and that's where I put the stickers on to make it look. Oh, damn it! To make it look like a control panel instead of just a piece of blue plastic in there, because the door, if it closes, sometimes it goes in, and then that's a problem. But this decal, these decals are just, they're gross looking. And I don't know if, it looks a little unfinished because it doesn't have, it would go right there. It would be big, United States with a flag on the side of it, but I don't want it to look crummy. So I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to put them on. These bits fit on. And they come off so that you can simulate the entire Apollo mission. And I'll just show that to you. So this, when it's launched, this is attached, and this is attached, and then there's an escape tower that goes on here. It's nice. It's big. It's like that big. So after the launch happens, and they're successfully in orbit, the escape tower, which is supposed to pull this capsule away from the exploding rocket beneath them, if there was a rocket failure. The escape tower, which is attached here, just gets launched away, lands in the ocean somewhere. And once they're safely in orbit, this cone here comes off, and this is the hatch. This hatch attaches to the lunar module, the top of the lunar module, which is launched 2 stories down. Okay, this is how the stack looks. Okay, this is the escape tower that gets blown away, that gets thrown away, and then this is here, and then that little cap comes off. And then the lunar module, which is stored under here, okay, the service module pulls away from this housing, okay, pulls away. The whole thing turns around, nose down, and this attaches to the top of the lunar module after these things open up. And there's a hatch that matches it, and they link up to each other. And then this, after it's turned around, pulls that away, and then this is discarded. And so the way this flies to the moon is there's the service module, this, and then attached to the nose, it looks really awkward, but that's how it does, is the upside down lunar module. Like that. The service module, the command module, and the upside down. 2 parts of the lunar module, the part that lands and the part that takes off again. So when it's on the moon, okay, this is the landing part, and this sits on top, and when it leaves the moon, this bit takes off and attaches back to the command module, and the astronauts leave here and go in there, and then they throw this away. Goodbye, Lem. And then just before it lands, the service module is thrown away. So almost everything is thrown away except this part of the entire gigantic Saturn V stack. But this model is this. It's all of these components. And they are all completed. And they're in a box over there. And this was the last one, and I was going to put the decals on, but I looked at the decals now in close up, and they are just unusable. Okay? I mean, they just are. And so I'm not going to ruin this by putting old decals that have marred little black spots scattered around on them. And I can even see that they're already starting to yellow because of their age. This is not a new model. This was made in the 90s, I think. This is leftover material. Keep it from getting any worse, I'm going to take a clean piece of paper towel. This is leftover gold foil from the lunar module. They actually provided the gold mylar to wrap the bottom, the descent stage and its legs. Okay, this is plastic for the windows because those were cut out with some templates, and then these are the decals, and I'm going to just keep them in this envelope. Just in case at some point in the future some like repair work needs to be done, or who knows what reason there actually might be. But there, I'm going to keep them like that. Poorly. That was just a whole failure of that was a failure of putting things away. Can't get things in a Ziploc bag. Okay, so there. And I'm going to keep the written material that came with it. There are the assembly instructions that came with it, which are really quite detailed. Here you can see, this is cool. This shows all the components and how they all fit together. These all have their own little storage boxes. Okay, so all of those are done, and I'm just going to put this inside the assembly instructions for safekeeping. And the other thing that came with this, let's see if I can find it, is the Apollo story, which is this was well worth reading. I read this all out loud. This was an out loud reading kind of thing because it's just so over the top. These are stickers that I made. An extra set. I should put these in the envelope with the other thing. With the other things. They were different sizes. Tested different sizes, and this is the size that I ended up using. And I'm not going to bother saving the ones that weren't used because that would just be confusing. But I am going to save the one I did use. Just Like, I don't know why. Just debris. Pretty much it becomes debris at some point. But I want to keep the Apollo story because it's just way over the top. I should read this. Man, the earth dweller, is no longer confined to the world of his birth. By virtue of his own ingenuity, man has now bridged the void of space and walked upon another world. Apollo 11 and her 3 American astronauts have fulfilled the dream of the centuries by successfully journeying the 240,000 miles between Earth and Moon. Yep. So, yeah, this just goes on and on. Sometimes it's really dry, and sometimes it's just bizarre in the way it speaks. This one really got me right at the very end. Okay, so you do this whole thing about the stages of the Saturn V, okay, and practicing in the command module. You know how they eat water out of eat their food out of little plastic bags and things, and you land on the moon, okay, and you come back. You know, there's illustrations, and you come back to the fiery plummeting through the atmosphere kind of thing. And then at the very end, it said, it would be a bitter irony if this most exciting of voyages were to end with the moon pioneers lost at sea. It's like, it would be worse than a bitter irony. It would be an absolute, total, complete disaster. Okay. So they go to the moon and back, and it would be a bitter irony if they were lost at sea. Oh, hi. Thanks for joining in. Oh, yeah. This is the command module for the Apollo 11. Yeah, it's in boxes. I finished this a while ago. Yeah, the way this is supposed to be displayed is it's supposed to actually be displayed like this. Is these components all stand on top of each other. Okay, and each of these components is separate. This is the escape tower, the command module, the service module, and inside this fairing, these arms actually fold down and reveal the 2 parts of the lunar module. And each of them is separate, so that if you follow these instructions, okay, you can see that they all separate from each other. So it's supposed to be a stand of itself. The parts don't fit together that well, so I tried stacking some of these, and it's like, oh, you know, as long as no one ever comes within a couple of feet of it, the tremor will knock them over. It actually kind of works, but it's possible to reenact. You could use the model to reenact the Apollo mission, because you can take the parts apart and attach them to each other. So, you know, you can launch, say, this is launched, this whole thing is launched. The launch escape system is removed. You set that aside. And then you take off the little nose cone and flip these 2 components around and attach them to the lunar module components and pull that out of its housing like this. And then when you get to the moon, this part comes off and the legs unfold. They actually do. You have to be really, really careful. Those are teeny tiny little brittle plastic parts, but they actually do fold and unfold. Then you can practice landing on the moon. I even have a moon surface over there somewhere. I wonder if I can, no, I don't know where it is right now. But there's actually a moon surface and a little standing on the moon astronaut. No, there isn't a flag. You're right. That's the one thing that's missing. There is a standing on the moon astronaut that I painted. I even got moon dust on its legs. I got it looking dirty. Okay. And then you can leave that there and take the ascent stage off. That comes off separately. Reattach it to here. Approach Earth, throw away the lunar module, throw away the service module, and have this come down. And then this bit here comes off, exposing the parachutes. The parachutes don't come out. I think that would have been pretty cool if they had parachutes, that you could set up, but they were missing that. But yeah, now you mention it, bootleg, why isn't there a little flag? That would actually, you can buy these little paper flags, right? Like the ones that they. Oh, that's really true. That's actually very true. The moon dust is like, it's like powdered glass with sharp edges, and it stuck to everything. In fact, the stuff that came back to Earth was just coated with it. When they have like the moon suit on display at the Smithsonian, and it's still, they couldn't get all the dust off of it. They wanted to get all the dust off of it because that was their sample, right? Anything that comes back from the moon was a sample of the moon's surface, so they wanted that, but it just stuck to everything. It got into the electronics because it was so super fine. It just did that. The moon suit, apparently, especially the gloves, were like painful to use, is what I've heard, because they had to be so stiff that for especially the fingers and the wrists, that it was really difficult. And the suit had to be inflated on the inside, so it was hard to move around. Part of the reason, if you see old pictures, of them on the moon, they do this kind of stiff-legged jumping kind of movement. Part of it was, okay, that was a fun way to move around and effective, but also meant that they didn't have to try to bend their knees, which was really hard to do. They could just keep their legs stiff. Hi, Aman. Thanks for joining in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the dust just, it once it got on something, it just didn't come off. Really horrible stuff, which is going to be a problem, if people are going to be hanging out on the moon in the future. It's going to be a problem for them living with that. What I need to do is put this in here, kind of fold it over and save this. This is an extra sheet of the stickers that I used. Knee bending, yes, not knee bending on the moon. I don't know why I'm saving this, but I'm going to put it in here. I need another box for this. I need a smaller box because this is just too big. I'm going to go off camera. I'm just going to look around and see what I've got. I don't know if I have anything. I've got smaller ones, but they what I need to do. What I need to do is I need to watch the deliveries that come in because we're getting boxes in all the time. Always more and more boxes because people keep ordering stuff online. I need to get one about half this size. That's kind of deep. Yeah, that's kind of what we need to do, isn't it? Is vacuum all of the dust off the moon. So yeah, I just need a small box. maybe less than half the size, a little taller, that I can put this in. And then all of the parts need to fit inside of another box so that I can put them on a shelf so that they're out of the way. But yeah, I'm not going to put the United States stickers on that, as I said. It's because the decals are not good. The decals they're old. This whole model kit was produced, I believe, in the 1990s. Is there a copyright date on this, maybe? Yeah. Oh, wow. I was wrong. Copyright is 83. So this thing is 40, oh, geez, more than 40 years old, the model kit itself was more than 40 years old when it was made. It was made more than 40 years ago. Yeah, the decals just deteriorated to the point where they're not really usable. Yeah, so this like most of the models I've made now they've been vintage. Like the submarine were models that were actually, yeah, there you go. Well, I'll tell you, the submarine model was made in the mid 1960s, probably around 1964 or 65, and I built one of those when I was in like 8th grade. And when I wanted to build another one, I bought three vintage kits, all of which had been started, and I was able to get enough parts out of the three kits to build one submarine. And it came out a lot better than it did when I built it when I was like 12 or 13 years old. One would hope anyway. But yeah. And then I built this, and this is a kit from 1983. Okay. The Savoia I built was a new kit. Yay. But the Lotus Ford was a reissue from the 1970s of one that I built in 1966. So that was a vintage kit. And then this thing, the one that I just finished, was a 25-year anniversary thing from 1993. Yeah, and I've been around a while. The next thing I'm going to build after I'm done with the Lotus Ford, because I need to go back to that, is also going to be a new model. It's going to of an old plane, is an X-15. Okay, well this is this needs to wait for a new box. I need to watch the boxes that come in and grab, instead of recycling them, I need to grab one that's a little bit less than half this size and at least this high. Sometimes those show up. Then I can put the command module in there, and then I can repack all of those other pieces. I'm going to not take that box. Yeah, I need that box. That's got a piece in it. I'm going to be off camera for just a bit. I do D&D models. Let me show you some. As soon as I set this aside. All this stuff out of the way. So this is an opportunity to talk about why this stream exists and why it's listed under Dungeons and Dragons. It is listed under Dungeons and Dragons because this stream started because we make our own dungeon tiles. And they're printed on the PLA printers, like the one back there. And yeah, we make these for our show, our Dungeons and Dragons show. Oh, my character, these guys, I got their pants painted, and I'm trying to get the yellow for their tunics because the yellow that I had doesn't work and the blue doesn't work. So I think a little bit later on, I'm going to paint their boots and the communicator badges, base coat those. And I've got an alternative yellow. Oh, the guy with the flaming sword? Okay, this is me. This is a large size version of my character on the D&D show. It's done. It's actually finished. I play Ulseth Relf, a Furbog fighter. Okay, and this was my minifig for the show that wandered around in the dungeon, opening the door, ducking underneath, hiding behind it, waiting to ambush somebody who came out through here. This is my minifig from the show before I got my flaming longsword. So this was one that I painted on this stream some time ago, and then as a birthday gift, I got a maxi model, 4 times larger model of my current character. I'm wearing magical Tashira armor. Okay. Tashira colors are silver and green. And I've got a flaming longsword and a cold and ice enchanted dagger as actually a short sword for my offhand. Ah, really? Okay. Yeah, you should check out on YouTube, check out Dice and Dungeons and watch a couple of episodes of our D&D show. It's been going on for a long time. And our characters, we really spend a good deal of time trying to bring the whole show to life. It's not just, just playing in the basement. It's actually a show, and we really try to keep it entertaining. So this is me. And I painted this a while ago, kind of in between sessions. In between sessions of the Star Trek Command Bridge. But I can show you some. I think these came out really well. I see if I can bring them over without dropping them. These are also for the show. These little guys. We with the new group. Oh, that's always new, Amon. You just never know what was happening. Yeah, our show is set in a homebrew as well. Our DM made it up. And we have gone from town to town. Usually, for some reason, there's always like an explosion while we're in town, and yeah, it's things like that happen. We belong to a mercenary group. We signed on to a group called the Company of Blades. It's a mercenary group which gives us a source of income and a reason to do mercenary quests. We just finished one recently. But other members of the Company of Blades include these guys. These are the divorcees. Well, you should tell them about that. Who plays our Tabaxi Bard, Nines, the number 9 nines, for some reason. Chose that name, the stage name, I guess, and has put on 2 concerts. One was an outlaw concert. Okay. One was an outlaw concert, and it was set in an outdoor arena with a building that somehow started on fire behind it and gave rise to a hit song, The Burning Bills. Yeah. And another one that says, I don't care. But recently we recorded an episode in which Nines played synth music and in a contest with the person who actually invented synth music, and you should watch that because that was pretty intense. We were hoping that by winning that Nines' curse would be lifted, but we're not sure. Oh, an evil reflection, which reminds me that I still need to decide whether to paint these figures as normal Spock, Sulu, and Kirk, or whether I will make them the evil version with the goatees. I'm leaning toward the evil version, even though it'll be more difficult to paint. So these are them. Minis that I painted on this stream. You can go back on YouTube and watch their painting. We did these on the rosin printer. So we actually printed them ourselves, or at least our DM did, and then I painted them on the show. Obviously, this one was obviously a divorcee, with the hair and the what's going on with his pants. Some sort of dust got stuck on the rear of his pants. I mean, that if that isn't somebody who's been recently divorced, I don't know what is. Decided to go, all out warrior here, and our elf archer decided to go beige. Unlike the orc who became flamboyant, this one decided to go beige, but kept his quiver, the original green quiver, but everything else. That's pretty good. It's nice to have a magic item like that, like my flaming longsword, which was a really good idea until we met a whole group of manipulated enemies. They were changed alchemically to become not only just immune to fire, but they became healed by fire, which we discovered the hard way when running into them the very first time. And I was doing fire damage that turned into fire healing, and finally turned off the sword, flame off, and I got myself some cold oil and applied it to the blade instead, which was kind of, a little bit ironic to have a flaming longsword. It is a flame tongue. It's a flame tongue longsword. So it is just like the one that you'd get out of D&D Beyond or something that describes the sword itself. The same thing is true of the short sword. The armor though is a homebrew item. It's like a legendary armor from it's just a long story about my association with an of all things an elven cult, an elven military cult called the Shiranoon, and there were 3 founders of the group, which fell apart. They all fell in with each other, but one of them founded the Shiranoon. But this armor was made by one of the other ones for a third-party member. Okay, Ontaro made it for Ramardan. And so this is the armor, the actual hundreds of year old legendary armor of Ramardan. It has magical properties that have not been released yet because it's damaged. And the damage has to be repaired by another magical item, which I managed to acquire, but I don't know how to use it yet. I'm learning how to use it. So eventually I'll repair this armor, and hopefully it will keep me from being mostly dead like has happened a couple of times. So there's that. So this, yeah, for a long time, this stream was just painting dungeon tiles like this for the show or minifigs for the show. But when there aren't any, then I paint, I work on models like the one I'm doing there. So they're pretty cool because they have ball magnets in the bases. They stick to each other. And so our DM is able to make all sorts of things with these. We have many, many dozens of them of different configurations, outside corners, inside corners, windows, different kinds of doors. The doors work. Okay. And the latest iterations of these are really pretty amazing. They're totally seamless. Things like this don't show anymore. They're extremely high quality items. But that's how this stream got started, and that's why I do D&D stuff. I go back. Oh, the yellow paint is dry enough to manipulate now. I'm going to I've got these washes, which are really highly diluted paint. One is a slightly grayish blue, and the other one is a very, very light gray. Yeah, there's hardly any pigment in it at all. And I want to see, that's not too bad. If you look at it, it's a little brighter than the tunics there, but since these guys are going to be kind of cartoonish, I might be able to use this for the tunics for Kirk and Sulu, in which case I could go ahead and start painting them. But I want to see what the wash does to them. Because sometimes it just makes it look a little less bright, and it highlights all the wrinkles. The tunics are highly wrinkled. I keep joking that they did not have permanent press in the future. For some reason, they lost that technology, despite the fact. Random plate. I guess that's a good thing. So I need to squeeze out just a little bit of this there. I use a paper towel or capping these because they tend to spatter. I just want to see what happens if I put this on. It's really almost transparent, but it does tone it down. You can see that it kind of tones it down and darken. I kind of like how that looks. I think I'm going to use this. I think I'm going to go ahead and use this yellow on Sulu and Kirk, and then use this light gray wash on it, which will tone down the yellow a little bit, and also emphasize the wrinkles, because why not? I mean, if you're going to wear a tunic that's all wrinkly, you might as well see all the wrinkles. So it's really pretty subtle, okay, but and it shows on the white, but against the yellow, it's pretty subtle, and it's not bad. I was going to try this, and since I've got it out, I might as well. Glamored studded leather. Well, isn't your character good at sewing though? maybe, or have I got that confused? I think this is going to be too dark, but you never know until you try. Whoa, yeah, that's just even when I brush it thin. When I brush it thin, it's yeah. I'm not just this little bit of light gray tunic probably would work. Um, well, because this yellow works, which is actually a surprise. I'm kind of surprised that it does. Um, I can probably start. I can probably do some painting on these figures. I wasn't thinking I would be doing that today. Oh, okay. I had the two confused. Now remember, one of your characters was good at repairing items, but I had the two confused that way. Um, these are the instructions for the Star Trek. This is pretty funny too. The nerve center of the United Federation Starship Enterprise. The bridge is where Captain James Kirk commands his trips to far-flung star systems, boldly going where no one has gone before. Surrounded by his officers, the captain has instant access to vital information concerning the ship's course speed and any information the ship's sensors may pick up regarding alien life forms, vessels from unknown civilizations, and aspects of the universe in the proximity of the Enterprise. What's really cool about this is that every time Enterprise is mentioned, there's a little TM mark, right? Except at the very, very end. So there's trademark, 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 trademark. Okay. And then you get to the very, very end. There's trademark. Where is it? I don't know. As time passed, did the trademark expire by the time they got to the last sentence? Lunch. What are you getting, bootleg? What's the amazing lunch going to be? Cheesy fries with onion rings. Hmm. Actually, that does sound pretty good. I usually don't eat breakfast for some reason. I'm not very hungry in the mornings. Just don't eat then. But by the time now, what is it like coming up on noon? I've been doing this for 2 hours, more or less. My blood sugar starts to drip. Yeah. So, eating a lunch is a good idea. Well, these instructions can go aside. I'm going to move these aside because they're just going to be in the way otherwise. And I'll be back in just a moment. I made a mess on the floor here. Wow. I really have. What I've done is I've scattered empty boxes all over the place and trying to do my best to trip on them. A whole bunch of empty boxes, none of which is what I need for the Apollo. Here, these are the guys. These are the guys du jour. Um, no, it isn't. Sometimes I like breakfast food, but for like lunch or dinner, but not for breakfast. I just don't feel much like eating in the morning. Just not much of an appetite. Can usually get down a cup of coffee and sometimes something a little bit sweet, non nutritiously sweet. Uh, yeah. looking for the brush that I need, which the best brush to paint the tunic. I think maybe this one. Yeah, maybe this one. So the tunics, the important parts are and you can see the yellow that failed here before. It was around the collar, because that line needs to be nice and clean, and then around the bottom here. And I'll use a little pointy brush, tiny little pointy brush for those bits, and then a bigger, more broader bristled brush to fill in the rest of it. Oh, his hands need to be painted. Usually what I would do is I would paint the hands first and then paint up to them. The yellow. Or else I could paint the yellow and then paint the hands the flesh color. Okay. In looking at these, I've decided, no, I'm not. I'm going to paint. I'm trying to think, I'm just thinking out loud about the order in which the painting should be done. They've got these little communicator badges, and those need to be painted silver with a black edge, but I like to, because they're raised up, I like to paint up to a raised surface rather than down from a raised surface. So I'm going to paint those first before I do any tunic painting. And I'm going to use chainmail silver, which is a slightly darkened, it's a little darker shade of silver than the really bright color. Although on the box they're white. Maybe they need to be shinier. So I'm just going to use silver. And I'm going to do these, I'm going to paint these first so that I can get all the way down to the surface. All the way down to the surface of the tunic, because these edges need to be painted, and painting down to the tunic on these edges would be really difficult. But if I get a little bit of the silver onto where the yellow is going to be, or in this case the blue, I think that would be okay, because it'll cover it over. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes they'll use a dark primer. Sometimes I'll use a gray primer instead of a white primer on figures like this, so that there's sort of like shadows underneath, especially if you're painting with like whites or yellows or even some reds that are kind of translucent. And I've done that sometimes. I'm not, to be honest, I'm really good at staying within the lines. Okay. I mean, I'm really pretty good at doing base coats, and as I say, like with crayons, I'm pretty good at coloring it within the lines, but I've never been very skilled at that kind of shading. One of the members of our group, Nicole, who plays Zoya Ansul, a changeling druid, is a real artist. I mean, seriously trained artist. And is just amazing at those kinds of multi-layered shadings. But I am not. I'm picking up some of it, like I never learned how to do it. I'm picking up over time some of the techniques, but I'm just not good at it. So what I can do, sometimes with some effectiveness is use washes, little bits of washes on stuff I've been painting. On that large version of myself, I'll show that to you again. She sort of gave me some lessons on shading the cloak, and it kind of came out okay. So some people use speed paints. They'll give you you have to use a really light colored primer like this, like a white primer. And then they have 2 layers of pigments in them, and the darker pigment kind of puddles up in the creases and nooks and crannies and creates an immediate sense of shading. But I'm really, I don't know. Like I said, I was never trained how to do it. I never really learned how, and now acquiring new skills is a little more difficult for me than it would have been maybe obviously more than 50 years ago. So I'll try it sometimes. These figures I'm not too worried about because they're actually kind of cartoonish anyway. But her technique is like 3 or 4 layers. Put a primer down of some sort, and then a base coat. In the way she suggested doing it, like on the cloak, is the primer, then the base coat of kind of the color that's going to be the color, and then a darker color over that goes down into the shadowed areas, and then coming back again with the lighter color to do the high points and retouching them. That lighter color can be like the base coat color, and then even lighter color on top of that to catch the really high points where there might be like little reflections of light or something. So just all these layers on top of each other, which if done properly gives an amazing effect. When done the way I do them, generates kind of a muddle. Well, what did I do here? Yeah, this was a good idea to paint this first, because then I can paint up to it and get the lines correct. So these figures are interesting. They're not minifigs. They were just they're a model, right? So the fronts and the backs were molded separately and then glued together, and the seams sanded out because there were seams where the 2 halves came together, and then the heads are attached. So the bodies are like front to back, just ultra skinny. The hands are awkward, that kind of thing. The faces are highly detailed. I mean, for some reason, whoever modeled the heads, decided to make them highly detailed. Like Spock actually looks kind of like Spock, but very old and grumpy. And Sulu pretty much looks like Sulu, with some additional wrinkles, but came out looking Sulu-ish. Everybody who looks at Kirk agrees that this does not look like Kirk at all. Looks like closer to Pike from the pilot more than anything. So I don't know. We don't know what was going on with this minifig or figure. This one was really a mess to make. The arms went on, and there were big gaps between the arms and the shoulders, big gaps along the side of the body that needed to be squished together and welded and molded. And I'm seeing that the black has kind of come off the collar. That's really, I don't know what happened there, but the black paint came off the collar. It has to be touched up. So they're not molded. They were not made like minifigs were made. They were made like parts of a model would be made, which is not minifigish, not conducive to looking like the characters themselves. So I'm going to go ahead with the yellow that I've got. I was building this model as kind of an interlude between a really two intense models, the Savoia, which was a really intense thing because I wanted it to come out as good as I could, which I pretty much did, and Lotus Ford, which turned out to be just a huge amount of manipulation of the model to get the parts to fit and to paint them appropriately. When I go back to it, I'll talk more about how that model was not correctly built. I mean, not assembled, but not correctly designed. So I had to manipulate a good number of parts to make it look a little bit more authentic. And I thought, well, after those kind of two intense models, I would do something that would be a little bit easier and a little more fun, where I could get by with a B- quality instead of trying to hit an A-. So I've been building this. So I'm going to do my best with these guys, but we'll see. Each time, as these streams have gone along now for the last couple of years, I'm finding that, my hand is still fairly steady, but I'm having, a little more trouble getting the detail done. So this isn't a how-to show, but it may end up being a how-to show if you're well over 70. What can you do at that age anyway? And why am I doing this at all? Those are questions that could be asked, but not answered. So you can see that the picture there is kind of wavering a little bit. See it wiggling? I've got this vibrator thing. This was a true extravagance in terms of expense that vibrates the paint bottles to help mix the paint. So it's better mixed by just shaking it. It's not something you need. I mean, it's something that we bought that has been in use for a while, and it's useful, but I wouldn't say it's an expense you need to incur in order to do things. These I would encourage you to get, though, if you're going to build models or paint minifigs or anything like that. They're called head magnifiers. They're just magnifying lenses that sit in front of your face. They're adjustable. It's got a little extra light, which is nice. Put them on, and they look kind of weird, but it's really effective for me in terms of being able to the light and so on to get the paint in the right spots. Let me see if I can get edges. See how I do with the edges around the collar and the communicator badge and the pants. Out by doing, Should have done this side first. It's harder to get to. I guess that looks okay. You've got your hands in a really awkward position there. My monologue faded away as I was painting this. Yeah. But the old trying to do two things at once trick. Yeah, really being able to. There's these little squiggly ridges on the sleeves tunic that need to be painted white. But I'm going to overpaint them with yellow and then paint the white over that because the yellow needs to get down in between the squiggles. And I hope it'll work out okay when I paint the white on top of it. Hoping as this dries that it levels. More gelatinous than I would like. My brush slipped just a little bit. Maybe I think that'll be okay. If not, I can bring the black paint back up. Line. put that in the water and get this bigger this more bristles here. Big behold, I think you can get those, can't you? I don't know. I think I've seen one before. Yeah, but I could see that it'd be kind of fun creating those. You know, like the large version of my Ulseth Ralph Furbog fighter. You know, to do some large versions of the monsters. Why not? You know, that would be a thing to start with if you could get hold of one. Get you look at what I've done. I knew that was going to happen, and I'm not happy. Is I got my fingers in the paint. Bladdered all over its pants. Fortunately, his pants are black, and the touch up will be relatively easy, not totally easy because it's right along the edge. But I just do that all the time. What I could, if these guys would, I've got these holders with sticky tack on them into which I can stick their feet. And I've used these on minifigs before with some success, but these guys haven't stuck. They've fallen off a couple of times, creating a disaster, a painting disaster. Okay, well, when this yellow dries, I will be spending some time touching up the black because I got my finger in the paint. That's I keep saying this isn't a how-to. This is often a how not to. And this is a thing I do frequently enough that it's almost become a feature, which is not paying attention where I'm holding it, getting my finger stuck in the paint, touching that finger to an already painted surface, and marring something that had been done actually fairly well before, but now isn't any longer. Sometimes, as in this case, it's not too bad because, the color that I'll be using to fix that is black, and it will cover it well. I just need to, and I need to do that anyway because there are white spots in the black that need to be touched up. So I needed to do black touch up anyway. But I wasn't expecting to have to touch up fingerprints. When you're learning how to do models, one of the things not to do is put your finger in the wet paint. Just don't do that. But if you happen to anyway, don't touch that finger to an already painted surface and do that. Okay. So there's a how not to do it lesson du jour. I think the collar line, even with the magnifiers, turned out okay. The hands are not covered. The lines along this are okay. There though, it needs to be in toward the communicator badge a little closer. It looked okay from one side, but then not. than the other. I guess that will be okay, especially when I put the black edging on, maybe. So this paint isn't too bad. It will look better with the wash on it. It's a little uneven in its coverage, but that just kind of emphasizes the wrinkledness of. It's very wrinkly. There's just an issue here. Just the roughness in the surface of the plastic that comes from it, having had to sand down seams earlier. I'm just looking around at all these from different angles to make sure I didn't miss any spots. Places where the paint is just not covering out well. But that's not, the yellow is okay. I'm kind of surprised. I wasn't sure that this yellow would work, but it seems to be okay. Except for where I got yellow paint here, but there's spots there that need to be touched up with the black anyway. Yeah. So I'm going to, this has to dry, so I'm going to stick this on the holder thing here, and hopefully it will stay. Thanks so much. I wish I could say that. Well, it sort of is that this helps a lot. I mean, it really makes a big difference in terms of being able to see what I'm doing and getting the paint in the right place. But if you go back and look at some of the previous YouTubes, there are several in which a major oops, just a huge major oops has happened, which means that I did something and I had to essentially just redo the whole thing. I messed it up badly enough that in some cases I needed to sand away all the 2 layers of paint down to the bare plastic and reprime it. And I've had to do that on several occasions. On almost every single model, I've had to do it on the Apollo. I had to do it on the Lotus Ford. I had to do it on the Enterprise Bridge. Just frequently, just going, oops, that was a big enough oops. I need to get rid of everything I've done so far and start over. Okay, I'm going to attempt to do Kirk here. I'm going to try to do this the same way, getting the lines pretty much right and not sticking my finger in the wet paint. I'm going to try to do this one without the paint sticking finger thing. See how that goes. And I need to hold it in my hand like this. Otherwise, I just need to. It's just the only way I can do this. This is where I'm counting on my... Oh, it is. It's on camera. I am frequently not on camera. I move this I move this around just enough so that it wanders off camera. But one of my limitations as a painter is that I am very strongly right-handed. And so sometimes, it would be better if I could come at the surface from a different angle, but I can't because my hands don't work in that direction. So I always have to go from like left to right. Come back and put a little more yellow paint up here on a couple of spots where the black isn't quite covered. Yellows, reds, and whites coverage. Oh, I almost did it. Almost got my finger in the paint on the back. Yellow, reds, and whites usually do not cover well. They're kind of translucent. And sometimes they just take multiple coats. And there are places on this where that's going to have to happen. Collar, and probably on the shoulder here where the primer isn't very thick. Happens along here. I went a little bit too far. I wonder if I can straighten that out. Well, this is awkward. See, the thing is that although the tunic is wrinkled, not ragged. So yeah, I needed to get that line even. It's less critical on the back here because this part doesn't really show. He's sitting on a chair. Still, I want it to look okay. Oh my. See, I did. I managed to get my little finger into yellow paint somewhere. I don't know where. But there is now a problem with the yellow paint. Yep, there it was, right there, right along the top. Not a good place. for that to happen. It messed up the texture as well. And smoothing that out doesn't want to. That was so dumb. So it just causes a lumpiness in the paint. And it was just not very helpful at all. It was not a good move. Trying to brush out the yeah, see, a little thing like that just turns into actually a pretty significant problem. Not just because it picked up the paint, okay, and spread it around, but because it messed up the texture of the paint that was kind of drying and tried to level itself. And then it makes it look even more wrinkled than it did before. So more good reasons. There are many good reasons to not stick your finger in the wet paint. Those were some of them. But fell asleep. It is really uncomfortable. I got my foot propped up on the workbench here, and yeah, I cut off circulation to it. That's another thing that doesn't help, right? Don't do that. Don't hold your feet and legs in positions that will cut off the circulation. It will feel very uncomfortable. Okay, I'm going to put some extra paint up here on the shoulder where it's kind of dark. And come back to that. So there's a couple of spots like here and here and here where I need to make sure there's an extra layer of paint as I'm painting this to cover up some areas that are kind of dark because this isn't. We usually print our own. We have been printing our own. So I don't think that we've been looking for anything commercially in a while. When we first started, before we got the 3D printers, we did buy some models online. There are places where you can sort of design your own and you can even specify the sizes. We didn't do too many of those. We did maybe just like our main figures, because we didn't have a rosin printer yet. I don't remember the name of the vendor. They're pretty high quality, but they're fairly expensive too. Not as expensive as getting your own printer, but if you're doing more than just a couple of them, having your own printer, pays off. And because we're doing the show, we were doing quite a large number of figures, sometimes a lot of figures. But I know that I'm pretty sure that if you go online, you can find some places that have figures that you can buy and then paint. Sometimes they'll come primed. It depends on how much extra they charge for that. You can usually buy a can of primer, depending on the brand and the quality, from anywhere from like $7 to $15. And that primer, spray paint will last a fairly long time. If you start doing a whole lot of this, then you'll want to learn how to use an airbrush and do that, because that will make it a lot easier for you. You have a lot more varieties of colors and control over the paint than you do with a spray can, but I don't use one because my skill level is abysmal. I mean, I just am terrible with an airbrush. I just am not good at it at all. And so I don't use one, but it would make life a lot easier if I could. Why? Good grief. Okay. So this is things are starting to go wrong here. And one of the things is that the paint isn't squeezing out. There we go. Oh, geez. Okay. It wasn't squeezing out. I squeezed a little too hard. And now I've wasted a huge blob of paint. Just, yeah, that was a thing that didn't work. There was a blockage in the nozzle of the paint, and I squeezed too hard, and it just exploded. Nice waste of paint. Okay, well, at least I didn't ruin it because the back hadn't been painted yet. I dropped it. Nice, huh? If you watch YouTubes of this stream, what you'll see is that as I start the third hour of the stream, the first 2 hours, as I start the third hour of the stream, things like that happen with more frequency. My blood sugar starts to drop a little bit. I lose a little bit of focus. It's much more likely that I'll drop something like I just did there than early in the stream. I'll be painting along and then stick my finger in the paint. It's much more likely that will happen later in the stream like this. Just all sorts of exciting stuff can happen. That's why I tend to do, delicate stuff, things that require decent eye-hand coordination early in the stream, and then avoid doing them later in the stream, because I'm good for about a little more than 2 hours before things start getting a little bit iffy in terms of, being able to not have an oops. So what I'm doing here now is there are some spots. I'm checking two things. One, to see if I missed a spot, like there. Okay, if there's spots where the paint is really thin, like that, or if there are places where the darker color is showing because, it's where I'm trying to draw the line between one color and the other. And it isn't covered that well. His right shoulder is an issue. His right shoulder was an ongoing problem. Continues to be a problem. It didn't fit. And it needed filling and sanding and refilling and resanding multiple times. It'll need just a little bit more paint after I look around. Now I need to think about how am I going to set this up so that the paint dries. If I can't set it on his back because the back is all painted like that. Yeah, actually, that's how it's gonna go. I'm gonna set it down on its face down. That's how it's gonna be. Even the shoulder doesn't look too bad. Okay, as soon as I'm done putting paint on, some thin spots here, trying not to mess it up too much in the process, I'm going to be wrapping up today. And I'll be back on Monday, as usual, at more or less 10 o'clock Eastern. It's still daylight time, Eastern Daylight Time. Probably continuing some work on these little figures. And then maybe I'll be pulling out the Lotus Fort again, because I need to go back to that model and actually finish it, because it's not, it's really close to being done except for the decals that had become a disaster that I hope to recover from. Okay, well, I don't seem to have missed any spots. There aren't any places that are really too terribly dark. A little bit on the shoulder here. I was afraid of that. It's making more of a mess of it than fixing it. You just leave it rumpled. A little bit of a spot. A little spot on the collar here where it's think I better leave that alone. Okay, well, there's that minifig. That's a good question about younger, older. The minifig, these figures, the faces are molded so that they look ancient. Okay, let me set him down in the box here. I mean, look at Spock's face. If I can, if it goes on, I mean, he's scowling. The lines on his face are really deep. I mean, really molded that way. This is supposed to be from the original Star Trek, the very, what we call the original series now. And when I was watching it, because I was young enough to watch it when it first came out, it was just Star Trek, right? Not the original series, because it was just Star Trek. They were younger then, so they should be painted the young version, right? What did I do with? I keep losing those. The little tubes that go over the top. There it is. I tell myself every time I take one off, put this in a place where you can find it again. So they should be younger, but they're not molded younger. They're molded like ancient. So Aman has suggested, and I think I might do that, is finding some images of them from the alternate universe where they met the evil versions of themselves. I don't know if you remember that. They met evil versions of themselves. You could tell they were evil because they had goatees. That's how you can tell if someone is the bad version of yourself, because your hair is different and the uniforms were a little different too. I think I might end up trying to paint their faces like that. Yeah, is to give them their little goatee beards. So when it comes time to painting their faces, I'm going to go online or have one of the other members of Dyson Dungeons go online and look up what those were like, what those faces were like, and then attempt to paint them that way. So that'll tell us what their beards look like. I mean, I can only paint the beards on. I can't create the beard. They're not molded on. I can give the impression of their beards, and can also see what color their hair was at that time. So that I'm pretty sure I'm going to try that. So I'm going to when I come back on Monday. Everything goes okay. I should be able to do that, right? Come back on Monday. I'm going to put a wash on these yellow tunics, just a light gray wash. I'm going to get out an extremely fine tipped felt pen and do a black outline on the badges. Okay. And, oh my. I need to look at that. I think there's always something. I think I might have gotten the cuff wrong on the. When it's just pulled up above his hand. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll start working on the. I'll touch up the pants. The where there are white spots or where I got my finger in the paint on Sulu. So I'll get the flat black paint out and touch up the pants. Then the collar. There's some spots on the collar that need touching up. Put the edging on the badge, paint the boots. I can get that much done. If I had the blue color, if the blue was working, I could paint Spock's tunic. I don't know. Let me see if this has gotten any better. I don't know. I put some thinner in it. We'll see if it's working or not. If it is, then on Monday I can paint box tunic. If not, I don't know. Maybe I'll get to the hobby store over the weekend and get a little bottle of this paint. Splurge some of the money that if you go to patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons, patreon.com/Dyson Dungeons, become a patron, you could buy me a new jar of paint by becoming a patron. Seriously, you could. Get what I'm getting, just wandering off screen there, is through. This is just the raw plastic that the model pieces come on. Is I'm going to test to see if the thinner in this paint has made it usable. Because the problem with it was, you paint it on like that, right? And then what's supposed to happen is you paint another piece and you paint into the previously painted surface. Yeah, and that's what happens. Is it's supposed to just blend in, but what's happening is by brushing over it, it's pulling the paint off of the surface. See? Instead of painting, it's unpainting. Even putting like a huge blob of paint on the brush and spreading it around. It still unpaints, so this is still unusable. Well, it was worth a try. I can get the uniforms, if not the faces, for Sue and what is supposed to be Kirk. I can get those painted. I guess I'll just figure out a flesh color. I'll just use flesh. Why not? That's what the paint is called on their hands and face, and see how that goes. And get some images of their evil versions to see how that looks. And yeah, go with that. So, other than wasting a big chunk of yellow paint by the tube, the nozzle of the tube was blocked and I squeezed too hard and it splashed out. And sticking my fingers in the paint twice after warning myself that that's something I do and I shouldn't. Made some progress. So I can't show it to you because I put it over on the shelf. That's gone. Is it bigger than the one I did? Were you here did you see it? It's about this big around. It's like that much in diameter. Yeah, I wish I could show it to you. After this goes up on YouTube in a week or so, take a look again. But yeah, it's done. The command deck, this command deck is actually finished. And it came out pretty well. But when I finished it earlier in the stream, I set it aside over there on the shelf and covered it up. So if you come back on Monday, I'll bring it out and show it again. I think it's worth looking at. But yeah, the command deck model is this big around, and it came out pretty well. So these guys stand on it, except Kirk's supposed to sit in the chair. He has a chair. So yeah, if you come back on Monday, I'll be starting at more or less 10. I'll be working on these figures, and if you do, I'll bring out. I'll take a chance, go over there, bring it back, uncover it, and show it off again because I think it came out all right. The command deck, it's not the best molded model in the world, It was a cheaply made model, and it shows in terms of the construction quality. But I think I did a pretty decent job painting it and assembling it, and it looks pretty decent. So, I'll see you on Monday. So thanks for joining in again. Aman, I hope your session goes well. I hope you have fun playing your session this weekend. Yeah, I think it was. It was the kind of model that was primarily aimed at, it was a 25th, I don't know. It was a 25th anniversary of the original series. So it came out in the early 90s. Okay. So the model actually is a vintage model. This thing was copyrighted in 1993, I think. You can see the cover art is really crappy, but it was a really inexpensive model. You can see from the cover art that not a whole lot of expense went into it. Okay. It wasn't very well molded. So I think it was sort of designed. I don't think it was designed to be a nostalgia for people who were 30 years old or something. That people wouldn't be building models at that age, but here, yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try to make sure that little stripy thing happens. It's not very well molded. Okay. Yeah, I do have a brush that's small, actually. Here. I'll be using this little brush. You barely see the bristles there. I'll be using that little brush, barely touching the white paint to the little wiggles on the cuff to make them show. That should be exciting, shouldn't it? To see if that can happen. I'll see. I'll see how that works. I'll probably have to retouch it with the yellow paint where it goes over the edge a little bit. But I've sort of done that way. Yeah. Yep, exactly. That same brush will be dipped in either a dark wash to represent the goatee or a gray paint that will then be washed. But yeah, there'll be just tiny, tiny little touches, dots of paint that will then kind of flow together. That's the intent anyway. So, oh well, I'll see you on Monday. Aman, have a really good session this weekend. I hope to see you next week as well, and you can tell us about how that went. When I get back, I'll continue working on these figures, and as I remind me that I promised to bring the command bridge bottle back to show all of you that it was actually done, so you can see what it looks like and where these guys go. So I'm going to just cover this up. Say thank you all again, and have a good weekend. See you next week.